Right, Wednesday's videos and subscriptions, very encouraging results. 300 new subscribers, or just over, in less than 24 hours. Not exactly a record, but very encouraging nonetheless. I frequently get comments telling me that this is a great channel and they don't understand why I don't have more subscribers. And I think really the main reason for that is my fault. I don't push too hard for new subscriptions. I always leave that bit right until the end of the video, by which time most people are already looking to click on to the next video to watch. Now, like any channel, if it's to survive, it needs to continually grow. And to some extent, subscriptions are the basis to that. As I said on Wednesday, 60% of the people that watch my videos are not subscribers. So I would be really grateful if you're not a subscriber, subscribe to this channel now. Hit the notification bell and ensure that your notifications are enabled, and rather than waiting for my videos to come up in your feed, you will be informed whenever I upload a new video. Now, unlike a magazine subscription or a newspaper subscription, subscribing to this channel is absolutely free. It doesn't cost you a penny. And if you find that this channel doesn't really suit you in the long run, you can always unsubscribe. It's not difficult, it's just the click of a button. You've got absolutely nothing to lose. Also, I would be really grateful if you would leave a like on this video if you like it. Right, let's get on. Right, performance upgrades on any motorcycle. It's something that's given an awful lot of airtime to on the forums or here on YouTube. And any seasoned biker knows deep down inside that you can throw an awful lot of money at performance mods on a bike, in reality for very little gain. I think the main attraction of these sort of modifications is the ability to tinker with your pride and joy. At best, the usual sorts of modifications, spark plugs, air filters, exhaust systems, may add a couple of horsepower to, say, an 80 horsepower machine, and they often do alter the torque characteristics of the engines, but in reality I think for the most part it's the placebo effect for the owner and the rider. It's all part of the hobby. For me, it's all part of what motorcycling is about, just making tiny incremental changes to the way the bike behaves. For bikers, it's just a form of customization, something that provides the owner with the feel-good factor, even though the difference is barely noticeable. In a way, they're very similar to, say, those halcyon mirrors that I showed you on Wednesday. Some people don't see the point, they don't like the look of them, and they certainly don't make the bike go any faster, but it's just an embellishment that the owner likes to bestow on his bike, a way of deriving more pleasure from his machine. Now, there are a couple of modifications that are made to the Classic 500 about 8 months ago, but I didn't make a video on the subject because it's just something that I do with most bikes when I buy them. They are performance modifications, but I think people get a bit mixed up about what a performance modification is. Most people see a performance modification as something that makes the bike more powerful. It makes it go faster, but that's not really what improving performance means. Yes, it can be an increase in power, but it can also be something that just makes the bike run better, that perhaps has a slightly positive effect on starting, on fuel consumption, even long-term reliability. And there are two consumable components that every manufacturer puts in their machines that always leave room for improvement. That's the air filter and the spark plugs. As I've said in other videos, bike manufacturers have very strict budgets in order to build the machines, and they'll save money wherever they can to keep the cost of building that machine down. And when it comes to things like spark plugs and air filters, they'll go with the cheapest possible options that will fit within the performance parameters of the engine. Now, these two components are adequate, but they're not great. In essence, they're selected because they're the lowest cost option, not because they're the best. Now, if you're buying an expensive motorcycle or car, you're probably going to be okay to leave the original items in, because the manufacturer will have allocated a decent budget for those parts. You know, it's got a bit more money to play with. But if you're buying a motorcycle at the budget end of the market, a motorcycle like the Bullet, there's always room for improvement. Now, the two upgrades that I'm going to tell you about today, I actually fitted before the bike's first service. It's something that I tend to do as soon as I get a new bike, especially at the budget end of the market. And so far I've put well over 1,000 miles on both components. Now, for the purpose of this video, I've sort of refitted them and then filmed removing them and swapping over, just so I've got something to show you. But we'll start off with the air filter. Now, the one that comes with the Bullet, I think, is a Fram air filter, and it is very poor quality. Now, for a start, it's a standard paper filter, which from the start is very restrictive, and the problem with paper filters is that they're an exercise in diminishing returns. The more mileage the bike does, the more dust it collects, so the more restrictive it becomes. And that's with a good quality filter. And I can say it without a shadow of a doubt, this is a very cheap and nasty filter. The paper pleats are uneven, which means you're going to have areas in the filter that allow reasonable airflow and other areas that are going to be more restricted. And also at the ends where the seals have been moulded onto the filter, it's been a very sloppy job, restricting airflow even further. Now, if you think of the cylinder of a motorcycle as being a lung, just like we have lungs, with a filter like this, that lung encounters resistance with this type of filter. So some of your engine power goes into trying to draw that air through that restricted filter. I think the best comparison I can make, something that we're all very familiar with in these strange times, is wearing a face mask. Straight away, you're very conscious of the fact that it takes just a little bit more effort to breathe in. And depending what you're doing, there are times when you're wearing a face mask where you find yourself actually getting quite out of breath because it takes a lot more effort to pull in enough air through that mask than it would if you wasn't wearing the mask. That's exactly how these filters affect the performance of the engine. Some of the power that that engine is providing is actually being wasted just trying to pull the air in. In real terms, what this equates to is increased fuel consumption. You'll probably find when you're climbing steep inclines that you'll have to change down to a low gear just that little bit earlier, and it will probably inhibit acceleration just a little bit. What it's really doing is it's making your engine work harder than it needs to work. And traditionally, the solution to this problem is to use a performance filter. These work using a slightly different technology that is just as effective at capturing debris and dust and stopping them from entering your engine, but it allows a much better flow of air. It's a lot less restrictive. So straight away it's putting a lot less strain on the engine and allowing it to reach its full potential. They are more expensive, but that's because they're using a slightly more complicated technology. They're also using much higher quality components and materials, and a lot more care is put into the standard of manufacturing. The pleats in the material used ensure that you get an even passage of air. There's no dead spots. And the seals are moulded into place precisely that don't cover up part of your pleated surface area. They also have a near infinite service life, providing that they are serviced from time to time. They'll more or less last forever. So in the fullness of time, they'll more or less pay for themselves because they don't have to be replaced like paper elements do. Now, I tend to use the DNA filters. I swapped over to these about 4 years ago because to me they seem to be about the best quality on the market. It's just my opinion, but I do think that they are better quality than K&N filters, which I used for decades. Now, I'm not going to go in depth about how the technology in these type of filters works. I've done that in previous videos and it takes too long. But you will hear anecdotal stories from people that don't understand the technology that will claim that they cause excessive engine wear. Now, over the years, I've had a lot of people leave comments to this effect, but when I challenge them on it and ask them to provide some proof, they never do. And I've also in the past spent a lot of time researching this anecdotal phenomenon. And just like ghosts and UFOs, although there are a lot of stories, I've never been able to find any concrete proof that such a phenomenon exists. And in almost 40 years of using these performance filters, I've never had an issue. This technology is over 60 years old, it's tried and tested, it works and it's safe. Now, the spark plug is another area where you can make a tangible improvement to the performance and running of your bike. And I carried out these exact same modifications to the Interceptor, although I have to say the improvement was more remarkable with the Bullet than with the Interceptor. Royal Enfield do install very cheap basic plugs in the bikes when they leave the factory. I'm not exactly sure how common it is, but I have seen a few pictures along with some horror stories of these plugs disintegrating not long after the customer took delivery of the bike. I'm not really sure what the issue is there, whether the plugs were genuinely faulty or whether it was user error on the part of the mechanic that fitted them. But in any event, switching over to iridium plugs is a very common early upgrade for most bike owners. Iridium is quite a costly precious metal, so an iridium spark plug will cost 3 or 4 times more than a standard sort of low-end copper core spark plug. But iridium has much better wear characteristics than copper, which means that the electrode can be much finer. It's also capable of sustaining higher temperatures than copper, which is particularly important in modern lean burn engines because they tend to produce a lot more heat than the older engines did. The finer electrode means that the spark voltage is used more effectively, producing a hotter, fatter spark, which in theory should lead to more complete and efficient combustion and in theory more engine power. Now, I don't doubt any of these claims for a minute, but I think quantifying them is completely a different matter from a rider's perspective. I think the biggest takeaway from this is that you're replacing a low quality cheap spark plug with a high quality spark plug. A plug that will provide you with a better quality spark that gives more reliable firing and long life. So what difference do I think these two modifications make? Now, I'm going to be realistic. I'm not going to give you a list of superlative improvements as some YouTube channels may do. The list, to be honest, is short, but I think significant. Bearing in mind, I have had over 1,000 miles to sort the wheat from the chaff. First up, starting, especially cold starting. The bike starts up much more easily than it did before, which to my mind equates to less strain on the battery or your right leg, depending on what method you're using to start it. The engine also settles into a very even and predictable tick over as soon as it starts up. I did notice when the bike was new, before I changed the plug-in filter, that tick over was very erratic until the engine had got up to temperature. And I've got no doubt that it's the plug that's responsible for sorting that little issue out. On and off, clutch work at low speeds is a little bit less jerky, probably because it's not having to work so hard to pull the air in through that filter. And setting off requires just a little bit less throttle. The engine definitely seems much more willing than it was previous to the changeover. Now, the bike doesn't go any faster that I can tell, but then again, it is a Bullet, it's not built for speed. One thing that I did notice is that it seems to be achieving about 100 miles to the gallon now, whereas I'm sure when the bike was new, it was only doing something like 95 to the gallon. Well, I say only, that's actually quite impressive. Now, obviously, this is going to vary according to your riding style and the type of environment that you're riding in. But to me, that seems to indicate an increase in efficiency of about 5%. which long term I think is going to pay you back for what these parts have cost, especially when you consider that the quality and longevity of these parts should substantially outlive the service life of the parts that they've replaced. Long term, I don't think you're going to be out of pocket. Right, once again, thank you so much for watching this video and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. Now, I bought the spark plug from Hitchcock's Motorcycles, so I'll leave a link to their website. I got the air filter for the bullet directly from DNA, and once again I'll leave a link to their website for you to have a look, and those links will be in the video description down below. I'll be back tomorrow morning with an Uncle Stu's vintage matinee video. I've not decided which one it's going to be yet, but I'll find something. Meanwhile, if you're riding, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.